As attorneys and judges, members of the bar, we are privileged to stand for something noble, something honorable, something decent. We stand for the rule of law. Because we are honoring Abraham Lincoln and his legacy, this next award takes on even more significance. In Lincoln's most remembered speech, the brief but eloquent remarks we know today as the Gettysburg Address, he spoke of the fallen American soldiers of Gettysburg as having given the last full measure of devotion, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Indeed, Lincoln, the single figure in whom we have chosen to embody the virtue of absolute equality of citizens before the law, we have a figure whose sacrifice for that principle lives on today, every time we walk into a courtroom and preserve the justice and dignity of all parties. Sometimes here in America, here in the 8th Judicial District, in our lightly guarded courtrooms, where men and women in business suits debate points of law with little fear of reprisal, we sometimes take for granted that the sanctity of the courtroom is absolute. It is not. Today, we present the Liberty Bell Award to a man who, while not a lawyer, has done more, frankly, than nearly any of us in this room to secure that privilege for others, half a world away. Rob Ortt is an elected official, the Clerk-Treasurer of North Tonawanda, who John found out. For that reason alone, we can call him a public servant and a defender of people's rights. But Rob is also a company commander in the Army National Guard. And just a few short months ago, Rob was protecting the liberties of people who spoke a strange language, ate strange foods, and who may never have experienced the government of the people, by the people, and for the people in their lives. You see, Rob was deployed to Afghanistan as part of the war on terror, but he wasn't there to oppress at gunpoint. He was there to protect the very things we take for granted. I could stand here and recount the touching things this warrior did, how he delivered school supplies to young Afghani children, how he rendered first aid to Afghan citizens who had accidents on road networks, far worse than any in this room could imagine. But this is a gathering of lawyers and judges, a gathering of men and women of the law. So instead, I offer you Rob Ortt, a citizen soldier from North Tonawanda, who spent 9 months training a civilian police force for a nascent democracy, and who put his own life on the line serving as a bodyguard for the Afghan equivalent of the U.S. Attorney General as he helped set up civil and criminal courts in Kandahar. Rob Ortt, whose unit had to provide security for the equivalent of the head of Afghanistan's own National Internal Affairs Bureau, a top cop rooting out corruption in a land where police were once little more than thugs enforcing edicts from the Taliban. We are proud of our profession, but ours is a different challenge. We ensure our clients are protected by the rule of law with our pens and with our voices. Rob Ortt, a man I am privileged to call a friend, a colleague, and a fellow citizen of Niagara County, helped preserve the rule of law in a combat uniform and field boots. He helped restore the legal system of Afghanistan and protected the men who fight every day to preserve the integrity of that system. This year's recipient of the Liberty Bell Award is someone who I believe is the embodiment of Abraham Lincoln's legacy, and a man Lincoln would be proud of. Rob, would you come up here?
I also want to thank my mother and father for being here, and of course my lovely fiancée Megan, whose support over the last year was outstanding, and I couldn't be here without her. So we're gathered here today to celebrate Law Day in recognition of one of our country's most revered lawyers, Abraham Lincoln. One of the themes here today throughout the awards and discussions is service, whether it's service to our community, or service to our country, or service to our fellow man. We all have an idea of what service is. To me, it means your belief and commitment to something greater than yourself. That is why we're all here today. Not because of any one individual up here getting an award, but because we all believe in something more than each other. Whether it's our community or our country, we are in desperate need of men and women who are committed to making a positive impact on their fellow man. Whether you are next door or on the other side of the world. As many of you know, I spent the better part of last year not here in Niagara County, but in Kandahar, Afghanistan. There I worked as a member of a police mentor team, or a PMT, one of 13 U.S. soldiers tasked with mentoring and training the Afghan National Police across three districts in Kandahar City, the second largest city in the country with about 300,000 people. It is also the birthplace of the Taliban. While I was there, I had the distinct pleasure of working alongside some of the finest Americans from both Western New York, across New York State, and as far away as Minnesota, Illinois, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C. It was the most fulfilling and rewarding experience of my life. I spent 9 months working directly with policemen and other law enforcement personnel with the single purpose of helping to create a professional police force backed up by an honest and fair justice system. Whether it was working to provide supplies and logistics to the police, handing out school supplies to school children, giving medical aid to civilians when they needed it, escorting the Afghan Attorney General from one of the most dangerous cities in the world, or working closely with the chief prosecutor whose job was to root out corruption within the law enforcement community. I saw firsthand what Lincoln grasped early on in his career, that a nation of laws can only exist if people are willing to fight to uphold them. Our legal system is based on our mutual acceptance that it is fair, open, and has at its purpose the search for justice. I can tell you that the people of Afghanistan cannot say the same. Just as Lincoln saw that America's security and prosperity then rested on its ability to provide the promise of our founding fathers to all its citizens, so too does our security and prosperity today rest on our ability to provide the promise of America to people in some of the most dangerous places of the world. We often hear about the clash of cultures between East and West, but I can tell you that I saw the melding of cultures on an almost daily basis that gives me hope for a better future, not only for us, but for the Afghans as well. Since returning home this past January, I've been approached by many people whom I have never met, all wanting to say thank you. I can assure you that every soldier returning appreciates that. But what about the soldiers who do not return? How do we thank them? And I ask that question because on June 21st, 2008, 4 members of my 13-man team were killed as the result of an enemy ambush just west of Kandahar City along Highway 1. Their names were Lieutenant Colonel Jim Walton, Sergeant Andrew Seabrooks, Sergeant Nelson Ramirez Rodriguez, and Sergeant Anthony Mangano. These men indeed gave the last full measure of devotion that government of the people, by the people, and for the people should not perish from the earth. How do we honor such devotion? The only answer that I can come up with is to live lives that are worthy of their sacrifice, to dedicate ourselves and our lives to the principles that these men gave their lives for. I remember Lieutenant Colonel Walton recounting a conversation that he had with his father regarding his decision to volunteer for service in Afghanistan. And he said, "This was where I need to be. I felt this is the place that I could do the most good." I urge you to find the place that you can do the most good in your lives. And always remember that the best way to thank and honor those who have died to keep America free is to dedicate our lives to continue to make America great. Thank you.
I asked Paul at the conclusion of his remarks if I had missed it or if he had failed to make one mention of something that I thought was significant for Mr. Ortt, and I guess it has to do with issues of modesty. I'm sure not Paul's modesty, but certainly Mr. Ortt. Mr. Ortt was in fact awarded the Bronze Star and Combat Infantryman's Badge in recognition of his service over in Afghanistan.